Hi, everyone.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
This is something new that we're trying out, the Mama Bear live stream. We're streaming live, not necessarily a podcast, but kind of like that. And we're just going to discuss the issues of the day, culture war topics, and things that we have been dealing with or that we find interesting in the news. We're on Twitter, social media a lot. We're also all moms of, I think collectively we'll have to add up how many kids we have together, but a lot. We could definitely feel like a whole little preschool. But anyway, so I'm Scarlett Johnson. I'm with Moms for Liberty, Wisconsin. And so let's just get to everyone introducing themselves.
I'm Amber, Moms for Liberty, Wisconsin.
Jamie, Moms for Liberty, Virginia.
I'm Kit Hart. I am Moms for Liberty, Maryland, 5 children, and very happy to be here.
I'm Marianne Jensen, Moms for Liberty, Prince William County, Virginia. I've got 4 children.
Natalie Erdesy, Fauquier County, Virginia. I bring 4 children.
I'm Kelly, and I am a brand new Moms for Liberty member as of Independence Day, and I am from California.
And you have 2 children.
2.
Hi, I'm Shannon, and I'm Moms for Liberty, DuPage County, Illinois, mother of 3. Glad to be here. Thanks for organizing this, Scarlett.
Yeah, and I have 5 kids, so me and Kit win.
I have 3 kids and 4 grandbabies.
Oh, okay. Well, then you win. Yeah. The most kids. So how was your week last week? Briefly, anybody, like, since we've been back from Summit for a while, still kind of dealing with, not really dealing with it so much as I think the powerhouse organization that we are becoming, now that is a reality for the rest of America. I think that there's still the attacks, but what I like is that if they have to attack us this way, we're definitely over the target and we're doing something right. And from what I've seen this week, July, I thought I'd get a little bit of a break, but I've had tips coming in all day. That just today, it seems to me that especially a lot of the culture war issues, they're not going away anytime soon, as well as news that continues to come out. Amber knows about Wisconsin, about how unprepared our kids are for the workforce when they cycle through the Wisconsin public school system. They're not prepared. Their proficiency rates continue to stagnate or decline. And yet the only thing that schools seem to care about are how they identify and what sexuality that, who they love and how they identify. That seems to be the only thing that they care about, especially now that they're targeting elementary schools. So I think Moms for Liberty is definitely not going anywhere because there needs to be a group of moms like us on the front lines. What are your thoughts?
Scarlett, I'll speak to that real quick. This past week, most of you know by now that my chapter has submitted reconsideration requests for 50 books that we've identified in our school system that contain some kind of very sexually explicit material, whether it be rape or descriptions or cartoon depictions of sex. And you pointed out that our children their education is deteriorating. So why are we focused on implementing and providing books that do not provide educational content? They do not edify the student. They do not elevate their reading experience. Instead, they're really pushing an agenda that is not appropriate for these schools' children. I mean, in the state of Maryland, 31% of fourth graders are proficient at reading. That is abysmal. We have an 87% graduation rate with a 31% proficiency scale. So there's a very big disconnect. And I think we're starting to understand why, as moms, we're seeing our children not being challenged and then they're not performing. So would love to hear your all thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the bar just keeps getting lowered. Like, I remember being surprised when we put Arden into school, because she didn't go into public school until fourth grade, that there wasn't homework. There weren't summer reading lists that were mandatory. There weren't, projects that she had to sort out how to, build herself a timeline and meet deadlines. And we all did those things in school. So I think it's sort of been a long time coming and a slow trickle. And now that there's, the moms are pushing back, it's like, instead of the slow trickle, they've turned the tap full out. And I think it happened during, COVID. And I'm just grateful that we all see it. The reading in particular is something that is important to me. I've got dyslexic kids. I've always been focused on reading education because of them. And what I worry about is all of this conversation around mental health and the kids bringing their whole selves to school, just like adults want to bring their whole self to work. You can't do that. With the focus on mental health, we're missing the most important part of education and what it's supposed to do for children, which is give them confidence, right? If you aren't literate, you're not going to be okay in a mental health realm, because you feel like garbage because you can't read. And right. I mean, that's borne out forever. So I don't know why we're thinking that a curriculum focused on mental health is going to help these kids when they aren't literate. And, it's opening them up to like the graphic novel crap. It's just all trash.
The school system has one job. I think we can all agree. One job. We are parents. We direct the mental health and the mental awareness of our children. The school system's one job is to educate. Full stop. That is it.
And they work for the parents and the taxpayers.
I want to real quick mention that in Wisconsin, the Chamber of Manufacturers had just released the WMC survey where they said 73% of Wisconsin businesses said public high school graduates were unprepared for the workforce. And the quote was, Wisconsin public school system is failing our children and harming the Wisconsin workforce and the economy. Not only is this new data disappointing, but it should make us outraged. That's what she said in the Wisconsin Business Journal. So schools are to prepare children for what? For their future. College, business, if they're going to go into trades. They are failing at that job, that fundamental job. And yet their focus is not literacy. It's not what can we do so that our kids can add and just do basic math like in their head, without a calculator, but also to do even more sophisticated kind of logical reasoning. When they can't balance a checkbook, they can't operate a check, they basically can't even operate as a salesperson, more or less go to college. And this is primarily affecting, I guarantee you, this is primarily affecting targeting minority kids and kids of lower income. So when they're failing at that job, why is it that they are so obsessed with pornographic novels for kids? What I call the rainbow jihad, like they take over all the schools. They're just obsessively focused about everything to do with culture, what we would say ideology and politics, basically, but they're far less concerned with the things that our kids need, the tools that they need to succeed. So what do you think, Marianne? Oh, you're muted.
I know. I was hoping you would call.
I do that all the time.
I want to just kind of I gotta listen carefully. One thing that Governor Youngkin said today in a town hall meeting, he said, children aren't going to meet the expectation you give them. So whether the expectation and standards are down here or up here, children are going to strive to meet those expectations. And we have lowered our standards. We are just dumbing down our kids. We are not preparing them for college. We are not preparing them for the real world. And it's terrifying. So I don't know how we go about raising those standards. How do we work with our states to bring those standards up so our children can meet those standards?
What about you, Jamie?
Yeah, it's the same. So in Fauquier County recently, and Natalie can speak more to this because she is very passionate about literacy in our schools and is hyper aware because of her children, is that they've recently adopted the IMSE, right? Is that the Orton-Gillingham model, where they are trying to, our county is focused on sending our teachers through this literacy program and curriculum to bring back into our schools. So I think that we are making, I know for Fauquier County, we are making progress and investing and bringing in and getting all the teachers on the same page, because we had a lot of, there was a lot of comments that it changed from school to school. And so not all countywide was operating with the same program. And so they've really worked to bring our teachers in. And I want to say that the program is $2,500 to $3,000 per teacher. So it is an investment. And I'm grateful that our county is taking it very seriously.
Amber, now you could speak to what our mutual friend Amanda had been working on in Wisconsin regarding literacy. And it's a bill that was just passed. Do you want to talk about that?
I'd have to pull up some information, but yeah, she is doing great things up at the Capitol. And one of her, she's on the committee for education, colleges, as well as the trades. So that has been a huge help. And literacy is her forte. She had her 15 minutes with Evers right when she started, and even his staffers said he couldn't get enough of her. I mean, they talked literacy, they bonded, and I think she's going to be doing great things with everything that she's got going on up there.
And that's important to note because Tony Evers is a Democrat governor. He's not our favorite person, but the fact that a member of Moms for Liberty in Kenosha, that she was elected to state office, she's assembly member, that she has been able to have a unique, basically working relationship with a governor who's a Democrat. So much so that she was able to do what a lot of others can't, pass science of literacy. And working with actually Wisconsin DPI, the science of literacy is basically a return to how we learned how to read versus whole language. So
that's huge. That is huge.
It's a disaster. It's a dumpster fire. We're going to go back to a more phonetic-based learning. It is something that has been working in a lot of inner city schools. Have finally realized like this whole language just isn't working. We've got to get back to what works. Shannon, what's going on in Illinois?
Oh boy, what isn't going on in Illinois? I do see a pivot to your point about going back to the basics of literacy, and really getting back to your point, Kit, the role of schools. And unfortunately, and Kelly in California can speak to this, because Kelly, you were ahead of the curve in really recognizing how much money gets funneled through schools when you inflate beyond academics and go into a lot of hyper focus on identity, sexuality, health, mental health, counseling. And so unfortunately, I think our kids have been used as pawns to funnel more and more money into schools. And one of the perspectives that I really enjoy talking to educators about is what they're actually experiencing in the classroom, where teachers, I think, have probably appealed to many of you as they have me to say, look, all of this stuff that's coming from our federal and or state Department of Ed into the classroom, it's eating up instruction time for literacy. It's eating up instruction time for math and for writing and interpersonal communication. that it's so bloated with all of this identity and superfluous stuff that has dollars attached to it. So it's really interesting to, in Illinois, see we have so much, we have a super Marxist majority. We have Pritzker, who's all in on towing this very liberal, progressive, activist, sexualized agenda in schools with legislation that's been passed, that now teachers are saying, this is not what I signed up for in the classroom. They really do want to get back to basics. But it's our job as grassroots activists to talk to parents about what is happening in the classroom, because teachers are too afraid. They don't want to speak out and go against the union, and they'll be punished for that. And so they're powerless. Props to the ones who do speak out, but it's really up to us to tell parents what's happening so that they can know, guess what, these policies come down because people aren't voting in line with what they really do want to see in the schools. So your school board elections matter, your state legislators matter, your governor that's going to sign off on the legislation matters. So
I saved Kelly for last because she is from California, and California is on the front line of all that is bad in public education, and it's touched private education in California, as it has in Wisconsin. I'm sure all of you can attest that private schools are not immune from the woke ideology. Maybe the kids are faring better academically, but there is a ton of, the kind of the woke garbage that comes with that. So Kelly, what can you say to all of us? What wisdom do you have because you have a whole journey that you went through in California where you are now homeschooling, but what did you see and what warnings do you have for the rest of the country?
Sure. So many warnings in all places. I would say that most parents, they may be going to work, they're taking their kids to school, and they may not be aware of the ways in which these agendas are coming into their region in incremental phases. So for example, there's a lot of people I've heard who say, well, that it's wonderful it's not in our area, which may be the case. And there are so many good teachers that still exist, and they're trying to do their very best. But I always tell people, keep in mind that the teacher credentialing programs and the colleges, these universities that are training the young generation of teachers, the content is very radicalized with intention. And then you have, the teachers unions, which are definitely one element of this. But I think it's important for people to be aware of, like, for example, I was looking at the slides that Scarlett shared today out of Wisconsin about the gender transition in the schools. Well, so when I was looking at your slides, I was noticing that even those are in an incremental stage that is moving forward, but it will eventually get to a place where California is. Because right now it looks like for example, these schools are doing these gender transitions. And then, Scarlett, am I right in saying that they notify the parents within 10 days?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
They would notify within 10 days.
So that they actually tried here in California, a legislator tried to present that as a bill recently, and it did not go through, where they would notify the parents. And that did not fly in California. So the next phase, first they get these gender transitions in place in the school system, but then the goal is to work that parental notification piece out, because that's really the way things are moving forward. In California, in Washington state, in many other states, we're seeing an erosion of parental rights, parental responsibilities, just the right to be a parent, the traditional role of the family. It's being completely transformed. And so in regards to the child's health care, their counseling, all of these things, as the WISC model, it's called the whole school, whole community, whole child model. As that works forward in incremental stages nationwide, we're going to see health clinics on school campuses, and we will see, like what's happened in California, they're really working to make California, passing laws that will allow minors to access puberty blockers, which for most people it's important to be aware of. That's not its own classification of drug. These are off-label drugs that are oftentimes, prostate cancer drugs.
Yes.
And then you have the surgeries. So what is working forward in incremental stages is an agenda to have these school health clinics, wellness clinics, et cetera, that are providing sexual and reproductive health care. And that will include eventually, with legislative alignment, they want that to be offered to kids is the puberty blockers, as they call it. They would call it gender affirming healthcare. We wouldn't. So,
And Shannon, now this is already happening in Illinois, right?
There are many different things that have been pushed through in Illinois. And going even back to, the comprehensive sexual education stuff that's been put into legislation. They're doing it, to Kelly's point, incrementally. And I think where you're seeing it happen first would be in Chicago public schools, where you have a lot of students, you have low-income minority communities, and they've really leveraged that to, number one, pull in money into the schools, but to also initiate a lot of these school-based health clinics, because they're assuming that the parents are not involved. They're assuming that the nuclear family in the home doesn't matter, and that's a shame. But they're presuming that the school is now a place to initiate quote healthcare. I would argue that it's not healthcare. I would argue that it's actually preying on largely, Medicaid, Medicaid, right? Programming. And so it's really preying on the poor kids. And talking to Lurie Children's whistleblowers that work at the Children's Hospital in Chicago, they've begun infusing the sex education curricula into the schools. And the one person actually left the accounting department, left the job because of how much this person was seeing billed to Medicaid. So they're preying on the poor, low-income children. And I think that's really where my heart breaks, because, these are children who genuinely need as much ethical care and compassion in their lives as possible, and they're being used as pawns. But it's going to filter out from there, because legislatively they do want to take away parents' parental rights. They want to push all of this stuff through without you knowing about it. And so that's why we've empowered people with forums like From Courage is a Habit, and all of the work that Moms for Liberty is doing to just sound the alarm, because the onus really is on the parents. We know that, right? We can yell into the wind as much as we want, but we really need parents to be proactive in telling the school that they know their parental rights, and they do opt out if it's not an opt-in. I haven't seen that anywhere in Illinois. They've all forced it to be opt-out only, and that's wrong.
Yeah, it's opt-out only everywhere in Wisconsin. I'm sure with all of your states, you can only opt out. And in my opinion, opt-outs are a farce, because they infuse the concepts of gender identity, the concepts of critical race theory, the lens that you view everything, you view the whole world through power and privilege. All of that is deeply infused into every curricula that is provided, including things like home ec, math. Every subject that you can imagine will have some version of this, and it'll be in the way what the teacher asks for homework, what amaze videos that they'll watch in class, what YouTube videos, and then you get to what's on the Google Chromebooks. I was just sent just today what a mom was able to access with a 9-year-old in a Wisconsin suburb that is conservative in the Northeast Wisconsin. It was shocking. When the images were sent to me, I thought, oh, is this high school? This is really bad. Is this high school? It's like, no, this is elementary school. And it's insane. It's so bad.
And something else that maybe you guys have seen, do you have s'mores? Do you have those s'more newsletters from your school, or like a newsletter that comes out automatically from a grade level teacher or from a pod of teachers? It's kind of like, here's what's happening this week at the school. Maybe the principal does one. That's what our district has. But FERPA, which stands for Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, they're required to inform a parent of, for example, surveys. So those panorama surveys tied to Merrick Garland, by the way, right, the son-in-law, that's harvesting your kids' data about drug use, mental health, all of these things. They are required to inform parents of the intention to disperse this survey at a school. A lot of times what will happen is it will be buried. That notification will be buried in a SMORE newsletter or a teacher Google Drive. And so they've technically, within the parameters of the law, done their part, but parents get flooded with emails, maybe from work, from activities, from the school, and so it gets lost. And so oftentimes it's too late, and parents will say, I wasn't notified about this survey. No, actually the district did notify you, but they've buried it. So the FERPA stuff is really, really important. And any district that doesn't, attempt to inform the parent, they're violating a federal law and they could have their funds withdrawn.
Yeah. And our friend James Lindsay talks a lot about generative themes, and I'm sure you're all familiar with that term, but what it describes is a teacher will take a normal subject like math and then use that subject to generate a conversation about some of these social justice issues. So for example, he uses this example. He says, okay, we're going to do a word problem in 4th grade math. We're going to talk, what is the, a family of 5 goes to an amusement park. They spend $30 per ticket. How much money do they spend? That's supposed to be the curriculum. That's what's written on the curriculum. That's what the parents understand the question to be, which is fine. But then using the generative themes, the teacher may start going down a path of, okay, well, why do you think the family was able to afford to go to the amusement park? Do you think they came from a wealthy area? Why do you think they came from a wealthy area? Do you think that possibly if the child was Black, they wouldn't be able to afford, or the family was Black, they wouldn't be able to afford $30 per ticket? So what I'm trying to get across is that, our basic curriculums on face value look pretty benign, but then once you go, a little further down the rabbit, you try to dig a little deeper, you see that some of the times these themes are trying to generate the more the more social conversation. Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I've got a question for y'all about the FERPA, because there's no private right of action, right? Has anybody tried to bring anything to their state board of education on generative themes, like on math problems that are not really about math, they're about the social message underneath?
It'll fall into culturally responsive teaching, aka CRT, which is basically state-sanctioned race hustling in the classroom. That's how they get away with it. And at least in Illinois, the governor signed off on that being implemented in the curricula. So anytime a school district or a teacher wants to push that, they can leverage that as being part of the statute now within our state code.
When we tried to pass our Wisconsin Parental Bill of Rights, that we did try to insert language that would basically, the power that we need as parents is the ability to sue, and also that there is accountability if a board violates policy. And I just today, in exposure of what was going on in the Elkhorn School District, the board violated policy by developing a gender support plan without making parents aware. That wasn't voted on. It wasn't voted on through the proper ways. And even current board members were completely unaware that this gender support plan existed because it was rolled into a package in 2016. And none of this was posted on board docs. Parents, community members had no idea that when a biological boy was using a biological girl's bathroom, 10 years old, and parents were complaining, they assumed, they looked up their policy. They could see board policy says that, there's certain rules for bathrooms and for showers and locker rooms. And this violated board policy, according to the parents. And they went to the principal and they didn't get an answer for a year until finally it's discovered that there was this whole other policy that no one supposedly was aware of. And that not only was it created in 2016, but it was revised in 2021 to include the elementary schools. And I'm trying to figure out a way to like share that later on to show some parts of that. But on my Twitter feed, you can see examples of what is happening in Elkhorn. This is a small conservative district. Okay, so this is something that is not, the community did not want. And Kelly, I think you have a saying for this. They're giving you something you never asked for and you never wanted, but they tell you it's good for you and you're going, you will be made to care. You will, they're going to shove this down. And there's, it's very
forced.
How this happens. It's very sneaky. And what can parents do? I've been asked that all day. What can we do? Frankly, there's nothing to be done. Maybe you can try and file a lawsuit. Those are very expensive. And you need to replace the board, or you need to try and find a board member that's going to be strong on this issue. And that's it. There's no sanctions. There's no financial disincentive. And that's what I think is necessary, because what they seem to care about more than anything are dollars. They are always trying to get more money. So if there could be some kind of sanction that if a board violates board policy or isn't transparent or is putting parents through such that it takes over a year to get open records requests filled, that's something that's simple. It was a simple, a simple policy and a 18 slide, teacher training video that took a year for parents to get. And they're hiding it for a reason. They know that what they're doing is not popular. So Kelly, what is it that you say when they're giving you something you never asked for?
So oftentimes what I say is it's forced. The interesting thing is nationwide, we're seeing this tremendous demand by certain, and this is where it does get partisan, because I will say there's a lot of Democrats who are just Democrat voters and they agree with us. Those that I'm talking with are in agreement that they don't want this. But when you go to the Democratic politicians, well, they are pushing forth bills that force comprehensive sexuality education to be taught. And the interesting thing is, if you look back on the last 10 years, people were not taking to the streets. There wasn't this huge demand. You weren't seeing walkouts. You weren't seeing crowds of people go to their state legislators and say, we want comprehensive sexuality education. No, they had to legislate it because they had to demand and mandate it, force it on schools. And then the schools are in this position where now there's a lot of teachers that do not want to teach this because they know it's incredibly inappropriate. And they know a lot of teachers have gone through coursework in college about child development. They know that children don't possess the typical capacity to process this content. They know that it entirely negates what we understand of child development, ages and stages. And they don't want to teach this, rightly so. This is why when we look at the literature and the curricula and the texting apps and the slides and the videos and all of this content being forced into the school system, we know that there's an agenda behind it, because there's people and organizations and curricula companies that will have profit off of this. I've looked at the contracts in different districts in the state of California, and to just talk about the money. Yeah, there was one school district that contracted for Planned Parenthood to teach comprehensive sexuality education, $38,340. There's other districts that regularly pay $10,000, $15,000. There's a lot of money in this. And then, of course, I remember when Planned Parenthood came to my class more than 20 years ago in high school. So, and I remember the things that happened in that class. I will just say this content and the framework, its entire ideology is what most people don't know. And it's interesting. We don't know the history of these things. There's no history book on how comprehensive sexuality education came into existence. And so oftentimes you've got different researchers who have pieced together the history, who have pieced together the different aspects of, okay, this person was influential in this organization and that organization. And now I've been able to really come to another place where I see, okay, you have the comprehensive sexuality education. It's now working in conjunction with social emotional learning. And it's also working in conjunction with these school-based health centers, which they want 25,000 community schools or healthy schools by the year 2025. But they want to make every school a community school. And as we see these added on, an important thing to notate is who supports these.
Yes.
The USA Communist Party on their website supports community schools. Already I've seen the Democratic Socialists of America. It's like communist light. Mm-hmm. They also are demanding community schools. This comes from the, this is not just unique to the United States. It's global, just like comprehensive sexuality education is global. It's something else, but we're able to acknowledge it. And what can we do? We can equip and inform people after we ourselves are equipped. We can notify people. We can try and continue to encourage people to run for public office and meet with legislators, because once you have lobbyists like, a certain group, teachers unions, for example, or once you have other lobbyists that hold political sway over a politician at the state level, well, that's a concern, because I was up there in Sacramento in 2019, and we had a lot of parents. Parents drove up. You think of how big California is. It's huge. California is huge. Just for the whole state, it would take a while to drive from the bottom all the way north. But we had a ton of parents who sacrificed their time to travel to Sacramento. And then we had lobbyists who were there. And who did they listen to? The lobbyists.
A lot of people will ask why they don't want to believe it. I mean, CSE, the first time I had to deal with it, because I had listened to a lot of your talks, Kelly, and I had heard talk about, comprehensive sexuality education from other Moms for Liberty groups and from other parental rights groups. And I thought, yeah, not in Wisconsin. That's not going to happen here. And the first time I had to deal with it was last summer in Wauwatosa. When I started to go through the Advocates for Youth curriculum, I just could not believe it. I could not believe it. And I thought, the minute we expose this, it's all hell's going to break loose. But unfortunately, and it did, we had a lot of support. A lot of parents and grandparents and community members were upset, but not enough. Too many people didn't believe me, and they didn't believe all of the parents of Wauwatosa. It didn't matter that we walked around. I walked around with binders with here.
This you gave me that idea, Scarlett, the binder.
Yep, the binder. But you have to get to one by one. I would have to individually talk to so many people and say, look at, and then prove. Okay, here you click on Wisconsin DPI, and then you go to Advocates for Youth, and you go to the Wauwatosa School website. It was all there, but it requires the effort of clicking some links and doing a lot of reading. But most people could not believe that this was happening. They didn't want to believe it, I think. And I just wanted to say this quote before I want someone else to talk about what comprehensive sexuality education looks like in their area. But why sexualize kids? And this is something that I pulled from James Lindsay talking about Lucas. The sexualization of children in schools is meant to separate children from their families, their religion, their communities, and their values. it's essential. A lot of Marxists and postmodern philosophers believed it was essential to destabilize the family unit and shift culture by separating children from their families, to, as Paulo Freire would say, liberate children from the shackles of their families. And the goal is building a Marxist society. And when the state can capture the allegiance of a generation, then they win without there's not a single shot that needs to be fired. Whether you can look at Stalin, you can look at what happened under, kind of everyone likes to talk about what happened under Hitler. But let's talk about what happened under Mao and the Cultural Revolution and the over 100 million souls lost because of Marxism. No one wants to talk about that. They don't teach this in schools. Kids don't even understand. They don't know who Mao was, who, Ho Chi Minh. They don't know the world, so many of these just vicious communist dictators driven by this same philosophy, which is now running not just education at the highest level in universities, but it's trickled all the way down to K through 12 education and even in private schools. So I'll let someone else have the floor to talk about that and what they've seen in their schools.
You said something that is sort of on my mind. I've been listening to Stolen Youth. Have you read it yet?
So good.
Yes.
It's really good. And I feel for people who are not ready to dig deeper, because the whole thing just preys on your heartstrings, right? Like the community schools. First of all, in my mind, a community school is a one-room schoolhouse with the lady down the street doing the teaching. So it's like co-opting of language, right? Which is pretty upsetting. But who doesn't want a kid to be able to see a dentist? Because that's the way it's being sold, right? Who doesn't want a kid to feel good about themselves? So like if you, on the surface, everything looks nice. It's just sort of like SEL. And Jamie and I did a couple of educational things here in Virginia in our county when they were talking about bringing SEL in middle school. They already have second step in the elementary school. And of course, that was sort of like, I don't think that it was nefarious under the cover of darkness, but like when schools were closed here for COVID, that was the time that they were like, you can come into the office and look at the binders, but you can only have 30 minutes and you have to wear a hazmat suit and you can't bring your friends and there's no phones allowed and blah, 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 blah. So nobody really looked. And it doesn't look that nefarious unless you're looking at all the supplemental material, right? And it's just tilling the soil for some of these divisive.
Well, it's also trusting your educators, a lot of it, and having a relationship with your kids' teachers and the educators that are in your classrooms, based on that second step curriculum and the way that it's taught and how it's implemented. So not to cut you off, Natalie, but I think that, that's something that we are very fortunate in Fauquier that we do have a lot of parent involvement and a lot of parents that are saying that, they wanted to be in the classrooms. They wanted to volunteer. They are helping teachers as much as they can to build that trust and relationship. And that changes how that curriculum is implemented. They know that I'm paying attention. They know that I'm going to talk to my kids when they come home from school.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think because we're small, we have some outlier teachers who are just implementing however they see fit, but the majority here aren't. And then parents, I don't know, our experience was that when you break it down into like easy to digest chunks, Courage is a Habit, I think Shannon mentioned that earlier, such a great resource for SEL, especially that there's a graphic that's just about Chicago public schools and
10 years of SEL.
That's the one that is shocking. And when you show people that kind of thing and you take everything else out of it, it's like, okay, well, it's just a never-ending money pit. And why can't our kids read?
Yes.
Where's all the money? $2,500 to educate a teacher on Orton Gillingham, or $73 million to woke your baby. You choose. What would you like? And I think, I mean, every place is different, and everybody's just going to have to use the tools that work best in their community. But if you just keep plugging away and bringing your binder and talking to people and smiling, I feel like
the binder, I give Scarlett credit for the binder because I don't remember what you were going around with to different like events.
I went down to legislators.
Okay, so I printed all of the Advocates for Youth comprehensive sex education K through 12 lessons. Every single one is in here. It's heavy. Yep. It's heavy. And I went to an event where my legislator, Janet Yang Rohr, who's a former school board member and pipelined her way to state legislator, signed off on the bill, SB 818, that now if any district is going to teach sex ed, it has to be taught K through 12. There is no picking and choosing. And so I showed her and said, you have 3 children. Why would you want this 2nd grade lesson in the classroom? And you know what she said very condescendingly? Shannon, if it saves one life. Okay, let's go with that. So I bring to these at a different speaking events. This is the 2nd grade lesson. A child in 2nd grade will have a Post-it note that says this word. Do you see that word?
Yep.
Is this saving a life? That's what we have to add. And so when you put this in their face, Natalie, I do think that that's an opportunity to really bring full circle. This is what they have voted for. And when you show that to a parent, a grandparent, faithful communities leaders, faith-based community leaders, they're disgusted. But if they don't know, if it's just sitting in this binder or buried in a newsletter or just sitting in the classroom walls, they don't know, right? Well, like, it's just the same things with the books, like the Iowa chapter of Moms for Liberty. I think he was a politician leaving that event last week. Yes. He said what the Moms for Liberty in Iowa have done, it's the book of books. They have a whole book of all of the graphic, pornographic content in books. And once you show it to people, boom, yes. There's no turning back.
When I go to events, I walk around with a library and it's growing. And now I just talked to another chapter chair that's getting donations where they're buying like the worst books and they're creating like flyers to go with. And so that every parent, so that to see like this is the worst of the worst library, like this traveling library, so people can see. So when you're called a book banner, you can say, no, look at this book. And this book is available for young kids. And in Wisconsin, WASB, the Wisconsin Association of School Board, just voted that in the libraries, there should be no separation by age. That would violate free speech of the kids. The kids should be able to view anything that is in the school library, regardless of their age. That is insane. That is adults shutting off their brain. Okay, they have braces on their brains. That is not the way that we operate in our society. We look at kids at their age and we decide, hey, what are they developmentally? And Natalie, you would know this as a social worker. How can you, when your 2-year-old is throwing a tantrum, you don't sit down and talk to them and say, let's work this out. They don't understand that. So you have to find ways to deal with kids with the level that they are at. And this is assuming that any age can view this content. I struggle to think that most people actually believe this. The problem is they haven't seen the books, so they think we're lying. Okay, I don't think they really believe that what is in Lawn Boy is appropriate for a little kid. Okay, genderqueer is not appropriate for a 10-year-old. If they see it, they know it. They just don't believe us.
Right. All they hear is it's an award-winning book, genderqueer. That's all they hear. It's an award-winning book.
And I had so many interactions in 2019 with news media. And before you're about to go on camera with news media in 2019, and we're talking about curricula and the health framework updates and the books, they wanted to see some of the books to see if they could put them on camera. And the journalists that I interact, or the news media, they were looking at this and double take. what grade is this for? What is this? And they have to pause because they're seeing it for the first time. They're in shock. And then they're having to go on camera and decide what aspects of the book they can even show on television. And it's appalling. It's appalling because what we're seeing, and Scarlett, you made such a good point to share about Luke Auction Hungry, because in 1919, he became the commissar. And as commissar, he did that first because he was trying to divide the older generations for the younger generations, which is interesting because in CSE curricula, the predominant message is find a trusted adult. Very seldom do they mention talk to your parents. They might say it, but it's very, very small. The primary message is find a trusted adult. And no surprise, they also are now recommending in, for example, middle school Planned Parenthood curricula, that you can find a trusted adult at your public library. So anyways, it's no surprise, but we are seeing, when you start to introduce content to children that is way beyond their age level. One, I believe you're taking away the gift of a childhood. You're introducing them to adult topics. You're shaking their foundation because you're introducing them to content that is explicit and graphic. And, it's no different than some of the videos we see promoted through CSE content. I always tell parents, don't just watch the full video. Pause frame, pause frame, pause frame. Go back and rewatch it. Listen for tone. What's on, what messages, what subliminal marketed messages are coming across in those videos? Pause frame. What is the dialogue? Does the dialogue align with, for example, in I remember one video, the narrator's talking about oral sex, the character's taking a bite of a hot dog at the same time. So these things are intentional, they're marketed. So it's important to analyze everything that's happening in education through this lens of subliminal marketed messages, which happen in movies we watch. For example, there's product placement in movies, there's all kinds of things, but the ways in which we are marketed through media and how students are marketed, it's important to analyze those aspects in curricula through language, through the predominant messages in language, and then also to stop and think of the ways in which curricula and ideas are being marketed to us, the public. And what's oftentimes happening is that we're being told that comprehensive sexuality education is age appropriate. But I always encourage parents, ask, what does that mean? Could that be defined differently between different groups? So what that person says is age appropriate might be this, but this group says this is age appropriate. And then we're told it's inclusive, which sounds really good. We don't want people to be excluded. But when you start to talk about inserting explicit sexual, graphic, pornographic content to young children, that's wrong. That's just wrong. And then they're infusing these other ideas as well.
When you talk about inclusive, so it can even be as small as, I went thoroughly through the Advocates for Youth curriculum. So in 3rd grade, they would teach about periods, menstruation. And so 3rd grade, that's 8 years old, 9 years old. And in doing so, they would not separate boys and girls. They had them together. They talked about erections. They talked about, and they had big sheets of paper like this, and they'd have the word across, just like Shannon showed. They would talk about boners. And that's the language. So imagine getting into a small group, a breakout with 8 and 9-year-olds where they have to talk about these things. On top of it, when they did menstruation, they would use fake period blood and give boys tampons and pads. And what I thought was real interesting is that it was Always brand, and then they had a picture of it like it was a little advertisement, which I thought was kind of a little subliminal thing, and I'm sure they got some kind of kickback for that. And so the boys had to learn how to use a tampon and a pad with fake blood. Okay, I would freak out if that happened to my son or my daughter was doing this in front of boys. How embarrassing, how humiliating. And the message is, you can't take the boys out because boys can have periods too. Now, this is in a Wisconsin school district, once was a very good school district. This is straight out of the Advocates for Youth curriculum.
I can't.
And it's so much worse. It's so much worse. This is third grade. I cannot tell you how much worse it gets. The Amaze videos that they show fourth graders,
those are really
graders,
bad.
It's shocking. I am just, it blows my mind, and I'll get very heated if I talk about it too much.
It's okay. You're allowed to do that.
Well, and I was going to say Advocates for Youth. So the curriculum we're talking about is rights, respect, responsibility. It's sometimes nicknamed the 3 R's. And Advocates for Youth began back in 1980 as the Center for Population Options. That's just something to be notating in your mind. And yes, when you hear the word population, there's something worthwhile looking into. The content is like you were talking about, the videos and all of this. When you go to the framework, for anybody listening, International Planned Parenthood Federation's framework for comprehensive sexuality education, the 7 essential components of CSE now includes pleasure. And also it includes sexual citizenship, which is an interesting term. And sexual citizenship is actually, out of many aspects of different theories that exist today, there is sexual citizenship theory, which was written by a man named David T. Evans. And he himself was a student of queer theory. And so these are all important things to be aware of, because understanding the ideological framework that supports the framework for comprehensive sexuality education helps you understand why we're seeing what we're seeing. And many of these people believe that sex ed is a vehicle for social change. And what is the social change that they want? Well, there's many different forms, but one in which was stated in a presentation I'd watched, where they said that they wanted to reach kids with regards to sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. They wanted to reach kids in the early elementary grades before heteronormative and cisnormative values and assumptions become more deeply ingrained and less mutable. And so the goal is to transform society. And they do state the same presentation, they talked about how children are sexual from birth. And and so when we have elements of queer theory in there, queer theory is obviously not just trying to remove boundaries between adult and child that should cause us concern, but they are actively working against those boundaries.
Yeah.
It's important for people to know, I mean, real quickly, just because Illinois did pass legislation, and I know California did too, to implement comprehensive sex education, the words do matter, and they make it sound noble. So Advocates for Youth is one group that developed the national sex education standards, which sounds really accredited, right? It sounds like, ooh, these are, they're national standards, we should all subscribe to them. No, they were developed by activists, particularly sex activists. Planned Parenthood is an advisory for this activism. So you have to really tell people and define for them what it is, because then when it's put into legislation in your state, the national sex ed standards are actually sex activist materials being brought into the classroom to sexualize kids. It's not about learning about the birds and the bees or the biological nature of women, reproductive nature of women, girls versus boys. That's not it at all. It's this in 2nd grade with boys and girls together.
Yes. And real
what happened to regular birds and bees like we got? What happened to that? Where did it go? Does anybody have that curriculum anywhere?
There are some districts in Wisconsin that have it, but and what Shannon was saying, I mean, those Post-it notes, and I don't want to say all the words because I don't need to have more strikes against my account on Twitter, but this is kindergarten through 2nd grade, where all of the body parts are put on Post-it notes, and kids have to go up to a poster of a full-blown vajayjay and post like, here's the labia. I mean, in front of boys and girls together. These are little kids. Okay, they're little kids, and the same thing, they'll show a boy's anatomy, and they have to put the Post-it notes. And when I show the images that are part of the Advocates for Youth curriculum. Again, that's one thing. I was holding a sign where I made this big board and I had photo images of the K through 5 curriculum and put color images. And I was holding it when I was protesting CSE. And when local news wanted to interview me, they said, you're going to have to put that board down because those images violate FCC standards. So these images cannot be shown on the 10 o'clock news, but they are perfectly acceptable for children, for little kids in our public schools. It doesn't make sense. And it doesn't make sense just because what Kelly said, they're trying to sexualize kids. They're trying to destabilize them. Sexualizing them, sexual assault, these kinds of things. My future daughter-in-law is getting her master's degree in psychology. And if you talk to therapists who haven't completely lost their mind, they will still admit that sexual abuse is one of the most traumatic things that can happen to a child. It destabilizes them in a way that can just really break them for life. And that often, I think, what brings the pieces back together is often God. They need serious and intense therapy, and also I think a religious experience, because what happens to them is so horrible. And the primary motive of exploitation of children, like who here has seen the awesome movie, The Sound of Freedom? When you do this, you turn kids into broken, hurt people, and hurt people hurt people. They also are more easily radicalized. They're destabilized. They're broken now, and then a system can come in and use them, and that is all that woke wants to do, really. And I'm not talking about the nice teacher. There are plenty of teachers that are very nice. Yes, they're woke. They're not out to create Marxist revolutionaries. That's not in their brain. They're doing it, and they're not really understanding what they're doing. But there are those who fully understand what they are doing, and this is their end game, and this is their goal: the destabilization of society. What I saw in Philadelphia, what really angers me, is that the Democrat Party is perfectly acceptable using these very radical, very extreme, very disturbed people. They're using them just the way Mao used the Red Guard. And when their usefulness comes to an end, their fate will be the same as the Red Guard. Their fate will be the same as those of us. If they were to be successful, yeah, we'll be in the gulags, but so will they at the end, because they're too destabilizing. They're so radical. When their usefulness comes to an end, hence the term useful idiot, they will meet a fate that is worse than ours if they were to win, which they won't win. And I think that's something that I wish we try very hard to let people know what's happening. We can only hope that more will come around. Now, in Virginia and in Maryland, are you all seeing comprehensive sexuality education?
Yeah, in Maryland we are. And before I think we move on from that, can I just say one thing? And that is that the family is the only institution that can stop a revolution. And that is what they are trying to do. And it sounds very radical when we say it like that, because the average parent, enrolling her child for first grade does not think that a revolution is in the future, or in the near future. But we have to really wake parents up, because that is their mission. They want to create a generation of revolutionaries, and the family is in the way. So they are going to want to stop the family.
Well, we called the initiative No Sir, SIR, No to Sexualized Illiterate Radicals. That's what they're basically trying to bring about in radical activist public education, sexualized illiterate radicals.
Yeah.
Well,
I
and
like that, because it just makes it very simple. Like, your children aren't learning to read.
No, sir. Yeah.
And maybe these are kitchen table conversations that go way further than the kitchen table. It can
I would
literally
say,
be that
to answer
simple.
your question, Scarlett, we are definitely seeing comprehensive sex ed very prevalent in Maryland. I mean, it's, in fact, here in Carroll County, we're the one, praise God, we're the one, somewhat normal county. And our Family Life Committee developed a really great curriculum in kind of, as an alternative to what the state provided. And the state came in and basically, because of what our Family Life curriculum did, they said, no, you know what? This state curriculum is required by all the counties. So the state wants to take away county and local authority and what they're trying to do to preserve what their county thinks is appropriate for children, and they're superseding that and they're overriding the county authority. And so because of crazy, I mean, here in Maryland, as you know, it's very red. I'm sorry, it's very blue. I wish it was red, but it's blue. Our governor and our legislature is really pushing hard to have something like what Illinois has, which is the state standards being adopted. Luckily, we fought back really hard to have those state standards, full forced and implemented as law. And luckily, we were able to defeat that bill, but it's just a matter of time before it happens. So, yeah. That's one of our challenges.
Jamie, what do you have to say about that? Because I haven't heard you talk about this issue.
We have a family life curriculum in Virginia, and I'm sure the stack the binder is just as thick as Shannon's. Our county, again, is on the more conservative side for being the edge of Northern Virginia. So I opted my daughter out of this curriculum, just based on not having that relationship with her. It's taught through PE, and because of COVID and shutdown and parents not being in schools, I didn't know the teachers, and so I wasn't really comfortable. Just with it's not even the curriculum; it's the conversations that stem from the curriculum, right? Part of it. And so it was just not something that I was comfortable with. I think my daughter, which they sent her to the library, which doesn't make me feel any better, right?
Wow. I know. What happened to librarians?
I could have got homework done, though.
Yeah,
I could have got
she
homework
knows
done.
all about the skeletal system, so we're good there.
I thought librarians were supposed to be, unassuming, quiet, I didn't realize that deep down they were all like Marxists or something. Not saying they all are, but
right.
It's just.
Well, again, we are definitely more fortunate here and have had some pretty good conversations with our librarians that have stemmed from our county putting a book committee together. So our chapter in Fauquier started a year ago, and we had a list of books, like most of your other chapters probably have, that parents volunteered to read to find out if they had a sexually explicit material. And one of our fan club members, a local equity group, got a hold of the list and had it published in the paper as a list that we were banning. So that's how our chapter started. And our I don't even want to call them journalists, our local paper, ran with it. And so we've kind of been working through that in the past year, and we made some really fantastic progress. And Governor Youngkin put down some policy for sexually explicit materials in curriculum, and our county opted to include library materials, which was huge.
Marianne had an interesting experience with the.
Oh yes, Marianne got a firsthand experience.
Yeah, I visited Fauquier County 2 weeks ago, and I have no problem going up to people.
Yes, whenever you guys say the name of your county.
I know. Anyway, I was visiting my friends over in Fauquier, and I went up to a table, this group that Jamie and Natalie are talking about, and I didn't have my Monster Liberty hat on. I took it off, and I was talking with the lady, and I said, "So what do you have here?" And she was like, "Oh," and she uncovered. She had this list of these banned books, and she hurried and uncovered it. and then hurried and covered it back up. And I said, oh, I saw genderqueer on there. I said, has that been banned? And she's like, well, they're trying to ban it. And I said, have you read it before? She goes, well, yeah, I've read it. And I said, have you read it to your child? Well, you know, the Bible has all this pornography and blah, 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 going on. And then she tells me it's good for kids to feel uncomfortable when they're reading something because that's how they grow stronger. I mean, didn't even hide the fact that she was grooming. You know, anyway, we had this big, long conversation, and I put my Moms for Liberty hat on. I said, have a great evening. And I walked off because she knew Jamie and Natalie and knew that they were banning.
And then they tweeted that somebody was intimidating and bullying them from our chapter.
Oh.
Right.
Not
Yeah,
no, she still didn't answer the question. I guarantee you she didn't read it to her child.
No,
Okay?
and also Marianne asked them if they could just go to the public library to get it. And what did she tell you, Marianne?
Oh, she said, well, some people can. No, I said, well, you know, banning books is taking them out of the public spaces. I said, you could go to Barnes and Noble. And she said, well, you know, what about parents that can't afford Barnes and Noble? And I said, go to your public library. Well, they don't carry it in the public library. They don't carry it in the public library, but you want to shove it down my child's throat. You know, anyway, it was just this big, long conversation.
The best part that I love is that we don't even have that book in our.
No, I know.
Like, they don't know what we do and don't have as far as the dirty books. Like, they don't.
You know, in my experience, like Dane County is basically, you know, its own Marxist, as Amber knows. It's like a little Marxist enclave. Madison, because it's by the University of Madison. Even there, so the 5 top books with the most pornographic imagery and the description of sex acts. And you know, like with genderqueer and Fun Home, some of the worst parts aren't even that. Like, there's even posters in the background about abortion rights or anti-Christian imagery, and the parents are always strange. Like in Fun Home, they hint that the father basically molested young boys. You know, it's just strange. You read it and you feel gross and icky, and you're like, what's the whole point of this? This is depressing and sad. And you know, why do you want to thrust this upon kids? If you want something that's maybe soulful and sad, there are plenty of books that will, you know, The Count of Monte Cristo. That's something that my daughter just started reading. You know, Les Miserables. There's plenty of books that will be sobering. There will be, kids will learn something from them. It's not necessarily happy-go-lucky, but there's a moral lesson. There's something good to be learned through that suffering and through the death. But no, they want rape and violence and vileness and parents that are just terrible, and religious, like anyone who's religious comes off as a pedophile, or just, it's all bad. And so then when I kept thinking why, and that's where finding the answers, the destabilization. But I firmly believe that those who advocate for these, a lot of them will not show them to their kids. They don't want their kids reading them. Those are for our kids. Those are for others, not for me. All those Hollywood stars that won't give their kids a phone, yet they're starring in these movies. You know, they're trying
real quickly. Can I just say about the genderqueer? I think you're right. I don't think most people consciously are saying that they want to sexualize and break kids with a Marxist agenda. When I listen, I haven't shared this yet, I took notes. I listened to a closed session school board meeting in Wheaton, Illinois, where the school board was discussing whether they would circulate genderqueer in the high school libraries. And it wasn't supposed to be closed session, but the attorney general, there was an appeal and they had to release it. And so most people still haven't listened to it. I listened to it. It was about 45 minutes and I have time-stamped notes. And what I heard was a lot of virtue. And I think that's what we're up against right now. There's a lot of virtue in these school board meetings. We saw it in COVID. I'm going to save my community by telling kindergartners to mask, blah, blah, blah. And now we're seeing a lot of virtue where if you don't circulate a sexualized pornographic book that is the wrong message to kids of any sexuality, quite frankly, and to teachers,
That's the other thing. I printed out genderqueer. It's the main character is a teacher in a classroom.
Yeah.
That never gets told. Everybody focuses on the graphic porn. The moral of the story is that it's a teacher saying literally, I wonder if any of these kids are trans or binary, but don't have words for it yet. This is the thought bubble. And at the end, the parents' kids only have me for a day. If the parents hate me, they never have to see me again. And I think the administration would support me. Nobody gets to the end of this book. That is really the scariest moral of the story, is that after all this terrible message about these kids, about the, this confused child doing all these, terrible things with the dating world, blah, blah, blah. It's really a teacher in the classroom. And so what parents and school board members don't even get to when they think about their virtue is the implication of that. But they're holding on to that virtue and it's misguided. And so we're up against educating people. This is not virtuous.
Yep. I think you to get and I'm by next time I'll figure out how to share this stuff. But I wanted to share this slide, and it really goes in theme because this was again Elkhorn, and what's important about this is a conservative area. They did not want this, they did not ask for it, and they weren't even aware of this gender support plan, and neither were supposedly some of the administrators in the school district or the actual board members. But here's family notification protocols. Family is not required to be present. If using the preferred name triggers negative emotions, if the family is present as they discuss their gender support plan, then if there's negativity with the family during the meeting, it says, do not use it during the meeting. And that goes back to Kelly, what you said, read between the lines. It said, do not use it during the meeting. That translation is hide when the parents are around, pretend, use that kid's biological name and pronouns. But when parents are not around, you go ahead and you do the right thing and you affirm. And the language throughout this slideshow and then the adjacent video is that parents, hey, if they're on board, great. If they're not, you keep going. You don't listen to the parents. You've got a bigger job. You're more important. You're saving this child. So you can disregard the parents because this mission is so great. It's so good what you're doing. It's so virtuous and noble that you may have to do it despite the will of the parent. And just like you said, Shannon, who cares if they hate you? You're saving that child's life, supposedly, that in their mind.
Well, and there's, with regards to CSE for short, comprehensive sexuality education, it's important to analyze all the different layers. Are parents being told to go into the school district, and are they just being shown a paper binder? What are the slides in presentation mode? What are they willing to share, or can you have access or public record request, or perhaps find out what the teacher training materials are for the course? If you have a guest speaker coming into your district, is that guest speaker prevented by the school board in what they're permitted to say to the students in the class? Is there any kind of background check that these guest speakers have to go through to come into the classroom? What models are being used in the class? What role plays are occurring? What games? What class materials are they going to be using with your child? What outside websites? What videos are going to be shown? If you're shown a slideshow, ask to be shown it in presentation mode, because in California, we were shown like printouts of a slideshow, but that's not presentation mode. You're missing the videos, you're missing all kinds of things. And it's important to understand these outside links. So for example, in California, in a lot of CSE curricula, they recommend a website called scarletine.com. If you go to scarletine.com or some of these other websites recommended, there's even texting apps that will anonymously text your child every single week. These things are so important to be aware of. But for example, Scarletine, there's other things that those websites are recommending and advising. And that's important to be aware of. Other things I tell parents, which this just happened in a curriculum review I did, there was a weird phrase on 2 separate pages. And in that term, it's not a term that people would be using. And it was all these words and characters in one, all connected, no spaces. So I told parents on this page it occurred. On this other page, it was a hashtag. Whenever you see a hashtag in your students' curricula, I want you searching it on every social media you can. The next thing that you need to be doing is, if it's not a hashtag, you see it on another page, search it online. Guess what happened in this middle school CSE curriculum? When you search this word that we saw in the curriculum on 2 separate pages, you search it, the first result is Pornhub.
Stop it right now.
It's true. And not only that, but there's references to, well, lots of other things. So when I'm working with parents, I'm teaching them exactly how to thoroughly analyze content from a perspective of marketing and rhetoric. And also, my background in college, I was an English major. So for example, if you were studying the story, The Awakening by Kate Chopin, your opening sentence, the very first sentence of that novel, gives you an illustrative depiction of what the rest of the story is going to be like. You analyze the characters, you analyze the themes. If you're watching a movie, depending on the mood in the movie, you're analyzing the clothing, different themes, like costume designers in movies will also, particularly, like, one character is going to be portrayed in certain clothing if their emotions are supposed to match that clothing. And then if you're another emotion, they might change the clothing. And then the lighting and the camera angles, all of these things we need to have in our mind as we analyze curricula. There's all these different layers to just take into account so that you can go, oh my goodness, I've seen this 5 times and now I just noticed this. This is representative of this. And it's worthy of analysis, because sometimes those little tiny subliminal messages are intentional. Yeah.
That's really good advice, and I wish more of our legislators and other policymakers were good at that. You have optimism that I just don't share, because I don't see people analyzing. It didn't matter how much data we put out the last few years or how much we talk about literacy proficiency. I just feel like it's just a lot of yelling into the wind. But I'm glad that you in California have the faith that you can reach people to be analytical and to evaluate, because if you haven't given up on that yet, then I won't either, Kelly.
Okay. Well, I will say
either. I'm not giving up on, and as a matter of fact, that's going to be a big focus of ours in Wisconsin. We are bringing around our state legislators, whether they're in the Assembly or the state Senate. We have a super majority in the state Senate. Who knows, 2024, we maintain that majority and we win a few seats, and we could have the veto override power so that we could pass our parental Bill of Rights, so that we could, right now, very soon, the Save Women's Sports will be up in the next session.
Kit, are you getting ready to leave? Oh, Scarlett, I think Kit's, she just left.
Okay. Oh, did she have to leave?
Kit. Yeah, she had to go.
Okay. All right. Bye, Kit. But I think that's another thing that Moms for Liberty, with our state legislative committees, we're able to work together, all the chapters in our state, and to start to work on policy at the legislative level. And we're able to organize and come testify to support legislation that matches our, all our philosophy, which was strengthening parental rights and protecting the innocence of children and focusing on academic excellence. So I think, we can't give up yet, getting involved in every way possible. And it is just super important. And I know Amber, you're very involved at that level as well. And Jamie, you were just saying, just even get involved in your county party. so that you have influence over, like, I wouldn't have believed 3 years from now that I have talked to, I have a good relationship with Senator Ron Johnson, who's an amazing, senator. So we have great relationships with our congressmen, and we're developing really good relationships with our state senators and our assembly members, and we support them. How can we help you with the legislation you want to pass? Again, joyful warrior attitude that, try to stay positive and also, but informative and resolute in that we aren't going to compromise on what we believe in, and we can win people over when we show them the data, when we show them what's happening, and when they see who we are, and that you can believe CNN, or you can just look at the fruits, look at what we've done, look at how much we care, look at the people, look at who we are, and then also
I agree with you, and I think we're all very accessible. We're all very accessible, Scarlett. So you and everybody here, if parents have questions, or if people want to join, Moms for Liberty or a legislative day of action, like, we'll fill people in. I think that's half the battle too, is people just don't know where to start. So if people are hungry to start, reach out to any of us, and we'll plug you in depending on where your motivation is to advocate. Before we close out, can I just share, I did compile all of the forms that parents want to submit prior to the school year at AwakeIL for Illinois, awakeil.com/forms. So if parents want to know, Courage is a Habit form is there, Pacific Justice Center has a form there. When you submit those to your kids' principal, and there's directions to do that, I just want to speak from firsthand experience, and also from parents throughout Illinois that have submitted these forms. They have been well respected. And I think sometimes parents are very scared to go on record, but I can tell you, to your point, Scarlett, they're terrified of being sued, but that you can only sue them if they have violated your parental rights or state statute or federal statute code, right? So when you use those forms, I just want to encourage people that there's a lot of empowerment there. And what I found, which gave me hope that was much needed and is starting to repair the broken trust with public schools, is that they worked with me on my expectations, because the parameters were discussed. And it wasn't a knockdown drag out. I found it opened up conversations with teachers who are themselves parents, and they were very appreciative of this effort, and I think are looking into it for their own children. So I think people have this fear. I just want to say we've had a lot of success with these forms. And when you share them with your kids, sports team, with your Bible study group, with your poker night friends, your book club friends, encourage them to do the same, because that sends a strong message to your school leadership, your school boards, your school, your educators, that you're an involved parent, and that you know your rights, and that you are taking ownership of the upbringing of your children as a partner with your teachers in your community.
And
Great.
I want to add to that, find ways to lobby. If you don't know how to lobby, ask one of us, but it is so important to be regularly talking with people. Even if you're talking to people at the grocery store, at the restaurant, or at, wherever you meet people, a lot of people don't know. And there are people who, because they don't know, they're encouraging or promoting this agenda because they believe the marketing that they've been told about it. If they actually got through all of the depths of this, many people would walk away from it. Because what I'm finding here in California, and maybe this will encourage you, is I am finding, by and large, people who are lifelong Democrats, people who have financially supported Planned Parenthood, that had a personal experience, or their friends did, or they've witnessed something within the school system or within the state, and they're saying, you know what? Maybe I gave financially to this organization over the years, but this is way too far. I'm not okay with this. And I think personally, the reason why we're seeing such strong backlash nationwide is because these people really overplayed their hand big time. Talk about not thinking and waking up a bunch of people. you start really messing with someone's kids, there's a reason why it's called a mama bear. I mean, it's really true. And so, I mean, with regards to the opt-out, it's important to lobby because, like, for example, in the state of California, you know, as I shared earlier in our Zoom, one of the goals is to eliminate any idea. They want children. They want sexual citizenship for children is one aspect of this, and they do want to teach pleasure and all of these other things. So the important thing to be aware of is that in states like California, we are a warning to the rest of the country. Washington is another that is a warning to the rest of the country that you could either wait for these things to be forcefully mandated by the law, and now you're playing defense, or right now you can get involved and play offense. I've over 40 families that moved out of California and went to other states, and I have told them, I understand, I empathize with you, I can see why you moved out of state, but if you do not prevent this in your state, you too will become California. We have to be involved. So in California, no parent can opt their child out for religious or other reasons of any teaching of sexual orientation and gender identity in any grade. That is not, there's no opt-out for that in any grade.
That's what they want. That's what they want everywhere. They don't want.
That's next in Illinois. That's next, the removal of exemptions.
Yeah,
That's next.
you can't opt out. It's too important. You're
right.
This stuff is saving lives.
Right.
If everyone wants to say something about, like, we don't have to end it right after, but I just want everyone to have the chance to talk about what their chapter, what they're doing, and to let others know if you live in that county or in that area, or even if you don't and you just want more information, what you can do and how you can start something in your area.
So I would encourage anybody to, anybody that's kind of in the game now, questioning and doing their own research, to look up Moms for Liberty and think about starting a chapter in their area. We were the first one in Wisconsin, and we have 10 now. Is it, Scarlett?
Yeah.
So just like our fearless leaders say, county by county, seat by seat, we are definitely making a difference, having a seat at the table with our legislatures. Encouraging parents not to spectate. It's a full-time participation. You can't spectate when you're parenting your child. And Moms for Liberty is not, as they say, trying to parent everyone else's child. We are saying, you parent your child, I'll parent my child, you teach your values. We want it up to the parents. So joining Moms for Liberty with the resources that we have and the joyful army that we have, I would encourage anybody to do that.
Great. Marianne?
Oh, I was just going to say one of the most rewarding maybe things that has happened this week for me, after being back from Summit and all the hate that we got from our protesters that loved us so much. We had a mom reach out to us, and she joined our chapter. And as I was looking through her Facebook page, I could tell right away that she had been a lifelong Democrat. And, great, fine. So I reached out to her and I just asked her what her reasoning was for wanting to join our chapter. And her I don't want to give too many details, but her parental rights were taken away with her daughter in school. They transitioned her daughter, helped her transition, changed her pronouns without her parent knowing. And our school board sits and tells us this does not happen in our county. Anyway, she joined our chapter, and I've been in contact with her today after our governor's new policy that just came out. It was so awesome. And she said, I've been waiting a year for this. I have been waiting for this. And it was just so encouraging that, she came to us. She said, you have gotten unfair treatment in the media, and I wanted to see what the chapter was about. She said, I still don't know if this is the right place for me, but after today, she's like, I'm here, I'm here for this. And I think that so many of us, including myself, it came knocking on my front door before I woke up. And I tell people this all the time. I didn't know who our governor was 3 years ago. Before COVID, I did not care. I voted and it didn't define me. And when they started going after my kids is when I woke up and I became politically active. And I don't even know if this is politically active. I feel like this is a battle, a spiritual battle. I say that all the time. This is a battle of good versus evil. And sometimes it takes something to knock on our front door before we wake up. And I encourage parents that don't wait for that. Get involved. Like Kelly says, be on the offense. Like, get ahead of it. Start now. It's not too late to start and get involved with your chapter, your school board, all of that.
And you mentioned being political. Now, I'm a political scientist, and I've always been, I've never been an activist. I was always interested in politics since I was very young, and, bleed Republican, my dad, a Marine, and Reagan flags and all of that. But I was never an activist. I didn't even know who my school board members were. I always voted in, the big elections. But if there wasn't an R or a D, then, I didn't vote because I didn't know who to vote for. Now I realize those are the most important elections, because through COVID, I realized this is the most central and local to you, and your state assembly and legislative races, they're so important as well. But your county, going down to your ward, knowing who's your county executive, these things are really important, because when the poop hits the fan, these are the people that hold the levers of power in your community. And school board is absolutely so critical now, and we all realize that more and more. And there was a time where I could just walk down my school board. Like, no one ran, no one cared. And it would have been easy for me to run for school board. And I wish that I would have been paying more attention back then. But all that we can do is take care of, now that we know better, and now that we know how important these things are, we have to remain and stay involved. And don't be afraid. I know that this term political, and everything's political. I like what Allie Beth Stuckey said. Politics is policy, and policy affects people. When you're trying to affect policy, you're going to have to get political. It doesn't, and that doesn't, now there's a difference between being political and being partisan. So being political is fine. If being partisan, maybe that can be problematic, and people confuse the two. Being political just means you are engaged in your community and you care. And the left, they sure as heck are engaged. And when we get engaged, they're going to shame us. Oh, you're so political. Oh, just ignore it. They're so political. They're the ones that make everything political. They're the ones that will drop their parents if they voted the wrong way. They're the ones that will unfriend you. I've never unfriended anyone. They're the ones that they want to create the echo chambers, and we are open to talking to other people. They're the ones that aren't. So always take that with a grain of salt. Now that I've done with my speech, Jamie, what do you have to say?
Nothing. We've had some real progress in Fauquier, just I think in building relationships with our school board members and elected officials, and so even most recently, we came back from Summit, and we had a First Friday event where we had a booth up, and we had so many positive interactions from our community, to probably 3 times as many as we did in June and May. And part of that was because of Moms for Liberty being on a national stage in a way that people recognized, okay, well, these are moms and their parents and they're involved. And how could we be upset with that? And then we had a school board meeting. And then we had one of the first of 3 community forums by our new superintendent, which he talked about his vision, for the upcoming year. He had a Q&A, which has not happened in our county in years. So he brought in staff members from administrative level, our budget, HR, to answer questions that parents had. And so we are, really turning a corner here, and just kind of that if you want to sit down, even before I started this Moms for Liberty chapter, during COVID, one of the first meetings I had with 2 of our school board members is, how are we going to bridge the gap? And so I've just kept that a common theme in how I am approaching people in our community. And, how are we going to work towards solutions? And I'm not always the most popular girl in the room. And I think we have to be okay with that sometimes, and just keep working towards those solutions and creating opportunities where parents can come together and ask the questions and just ask, that keep that transparent communication open. So, and also like Marianne was talking about, one of the most rewarding experiences was this network of moms through Moms for Liberty, that we've all shared so many parallel experiences. Marianne lives 15 minutes from me, and we probably led very similar paths through COVID. And I would have been so grateful to have her as a friend back then. I'm even more grateful to know her now, and all of you. But just having moms and nationwide, I think Tiffany said it when she's like, who would have thought we would have made so many friends in our 40s? But it's the truth. And, it gives me a lot of hope that you all are fighting the good fight in your communities. So thank you.
And Natalie?
Oh gosh.
I'm not going to try and say the name of your county.
Clock ear, as in eat here, drink here.
It's not. It's not gonna come out right.
Well, I will
I'm
share.
gonna send Amber a t-shirt just because she laughs so hard.
Yeah, you got to have one. We have to
Get
get
the t-shirt.
They're so great. There's a brewery here that makes those shirts. So I am thinking about some things Marianne said, and Jamie too, because Jamie and I live in the same neighborhood. So I'm grateful to know her. And former lifelong Democrat. Okay. Jamie says this thing all the time, that you have to give people room to change. And I'm not going to cry. I've been thinking about that a lot, and I think COVID really did a number on all of us. Working in mental health, I feel like I can see it every day, and I see it in my own house. I see it in me too, and I truly think that everyone has a line. And when there is something that crosses your line, I think it is deeply important for people to have someone that they know will be there when they say, I've had enough. And Jamie was that person for me. So I'm grateful that she has taken me on this journey, and grateful for y'all, and thinking about Marianne's new chapter member. Like, I think the thing that is so important is that we are all passionate about the things that we're passionate about, and also willing to engage with people and give them the room to see what we see, or see what they see, and still be there. And I think that that's what makes Moms for Liberty special, and makes what we're doing special, and very threatening for people. So, we're over the target. And I think that the most important way to keep doing that is to be present for each other.
Yep.
That's all I have.
I am so grateful for you all. I had to go in because all the stress, my neck was bothering me. So I had to get my chiropractor, and I was talking about all of you sitting there talking to my chiropractor, just like that I've made all these friends in my 40s, after COVID. I was unusually just very driven by this. We were living in an authoritarian moment. We continue to live in that authoritarian moment. And I just was looking around thinking, well, everyone's going to say something, right? Like, this is truly like authoritarian. What they're doing this to our kids, and to see with Moms for Liberty and Shannon, Awake Illinois, Kelly with her own parents groups, we all in our way, all were those rare people, and I venture to say heroes, because I think there's a quote that I read a long time ago. It doesn't matter how much you are taught to be courageous, how much you can practice, and read about courage. You never know if you truly are until that moment where you're tested, that moment where you either stand up or you sit down and shut up. And that's the moment that you know that that you are the person that will fight. And all of us faced that moment and we all stood up. And that's something, maybe in our small corners of the world, we became heroes for our kids. And to have fellow warriors like y'all, and I can say y'all now because I'm surrounded by, is amazing, because lots of times you can feel very alone. And Shannon, I love Shannon. She's my hero. Kelly, you all are. I've known Shannon a little bit longer, and I see the things that she does, and I'm just like, I want to be like Shannon. So,
I want to be like you too.
I mean, yeah, same.
I think y'all.
Well, y'all are beautiful ladies. Thank you for those kind words.
All of you, Amber, what I see you do in Kenosha. I mean, working campaigns and gosh, work like, you just work so hard, all of you. So you're all inspirational to me. And if anyone listening would like to be a part of a group of really cool moms, then you should check out Moms for Liberty, check out Awake Illinois, check out Awake Americans, check out all the things that we're doing, because you will be welcome, and you can finally talk about the things that you normally can't talk about, because you're always worried, is somebody going to judge me? Is someone going to, that's the number one thing that I get, is that I can finally talk about truth. Like, I don't think that boys can have periods. There, I said it out loud.
The fact that is a thing that we are like, did you ever think in your life that would be something that you would have to say in a hushed tone somewhere? Come on, man. I mean, enough already. Let's just be normal.
Oh,
I was telling Marianne today. So my sister and I look similar. She is younger than I am, but we look similar. And so sometimes when someone comes up to her and they ask if they know me, she kind of winces, because I have been known to speak my mind about a lot of, the things that you're not supposed to say out loud recently. So it was, someone did that at Governor Youngkin's forum today, and she walked up and, asked, it was flipped. So obviously it wasn't going to be a wincing moment, but I was telling Marianne that anytime Kimberly, someone comes up to her and asks about me, she's gonna oh, what are you gonna say next?
Oh yeah, like, are you gonna yell at me? Are you gonna?
Yeah, she originally back when COVID started, she goes, "You have to get off social media. Like, you can't do this anymore." And I was like, "Well, you can unfriend me, but I'm not gonna start." Stop saying. She goes, "You're my sister. I'm not gonna unfriend you." And I was like, "Well, then I guess you're in for the long haul, sister."
Well, and one of the things that was just incredibly evident to me at the summit is that this entire room filled with moms and some dads from all across the nation, sea to shining sea, were people who, out of an incredible abundance of love, they found courage. And in that, many of us, even my own journey, to find from a place of love the courage to speak, and then the courage to persevere and endure. And one of the things that's beautiful is so many of us, we're still doing this because that's where this is coming from. It's coming from love, because we care about our kids. We remember the childhood we had, and we want our kids to have it that wonderful. And maybe some of us didn't have a good childhood, and then also we're trying to prevent things that were hard. And the evident theme for me, by and large, at that event was just the amount of love and courage, but also the way that women just encouraged one another. It was beautiful. It was something that, you're going, so many people might try and step up and speak up, but then when they face backlash, they may retract. They may feel like they need to stop, that maybe they stepped out of line and that was out of character. But what Moms for Liberty is doing is that there are moms who are daily, day in, day out, they're receiving all different kinds of negativity that's false, spin media narratives, because the media knows that this organization is really something wonderful and it's effective. And so what's happening is, by and large, these moms, they're continuing to get up. They're getting up, they're waking up in the morning, and they're going. And I think that's beautiful. I think that's amazing. So I'm thankful for you guys. I'm thankful for every mom I had the blessing to meet, because for me, getting to go from California and, this fall, it'll be 7 years for me to see the journey, to see how many people across this nation are choosing each day, whatever the media says, whatever friends I might lose. I love my children and I'm going to step up and do something. I might have backlash, but I'm going to still try. And maybe in a couple years, maybe that person who attacked me or said something false, maybe they'll come around.
Yeah. And Kelly, you are the newest member of Moms for Liberty. And I think that it's really cool to say, like, you traveled with us. We went to DC to Heritage. You spoke, you've given trainings with Moms for Liberty. And finally, when you were at the summit and kind of surrounded, you were like, I have to join this. I want to be a part of this. And so I think that that's a really good message to send out, because as new chapters start, or, you can join a chapter that's already established. I think that it's just a good message that please don't look at the mainstream media and think that you know what you need to know about Moms for Liberty, because that's not accurate. If you watched one of our founders, Tina Deskovich, was on C-SPAN. Tiffany Justice is always doing an interview. She's fabulous. She's just amazing, and she has the Joyful Warrior podcast. If you want to get some insight into who we are, you can look at our leaders, who they are. Tina was at the Iowa Leadership Summit. They constantly reach out to us personally. What do you need? How can we help? They are accessible. They are down to earth, and they are good and decent women that are really trying to build an organization that gets to parents where they are. And Kit, you join us again. But Shannon, do you want to say something too? Because you also have, like you've talked about Awake Illinois, and your, chapter chair in Illinois for Moms.
No, I think you guys have all touched on it. I mean, Kelly really hits the nail on the head when you talk about courage. And I think a lot of us who really awakened in our own time, in our own moment, realized we couldn't go back to sleep. And I tell people all the time, full disclosure, I mean, I learned that I have pretty thick skin and I'm pretty tough, but I still grieve the mom and the wife and the community member I was before jumping into transparent advocacy. But all of us were changed by 2020. There is no going back. There's no DeLorean to punch in, before 2020 dates. This is where we are. And I think many of you understand too, this notion that we couldn't not do something. And in middle class America, a lot of people care very much about their social credit standing, what people think of them. And those of us who have courage to jump into this, whether it was early on or now, we know that we have to do something. And what's great about Moms for Liberty is it has really made it pretty fashionable to be on the right side of these issues. If it's just one of us in our community, you're going to be crushed. But if others join you and help you carry the heavy buckets of water we've been carrying, Kelly, you saw it at the summit. All of us are seeing it. They're starting to feel lighter and lighter. And so we're sharing the burden now with more and more people who are waking up, who are joining organizations that are going to advocate to be on the right side of this, because we're not looking for instant gratification. I'm not looking for people all in my neighborhood where it's fairly woke to knock on my door and be like, you were right. You know, they were totally indoctrinating our kids. Oh my gosh, the puberty blockers thing is crazy. I'm not going to expect that knock on the door, but I don't need it. And so I think as we just go through all of this in time, as we continue to raise our children to be morally conscious people, to do the right thing, it starts in our home, and we share this time and our talents with this ministry. I call it ministry. I mean, I wake up every day, like you say, Kelly, we do it again and again. This is a journey of faith for me. And it's thankless, but we have made so many wonderful friendships that will continue to, you know, develop more and more through this. And so I'm grateful for all of you ladies. I know it takes a lot of grit and a lot of courage. And it's right. The joyful warrior phrase is perfect. Find joy in this work as you keep fighting. So thanks for all you do, ladies.
And, you know, remember, don't rock the boat loses in every history book ever. I don't think it was my place. That's not something that heroes say. That's not what wins.
One more thing I'll add. Stop. Wow. Stop counting the wolves. It sounds like wolves are in my house right now, but stop counting the wolves, because they're all.
That would be my dog Gigi if someone was walking by.
So cute.
Stop counting the wolves, empower the shepherds, because that's what's going to save our sheep. We can't keep saying, but there's a wolf and there's a wolf and there's mainstream media and there's a hater and there's a troll. They're always going to be there, but the flock needs many shepherds as possible. You are shepherds. Just keep empowering other shepherds to join, and it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, this is our time for choosing. We stand on the precipice that Ronald Reagan talked about in my favorite speech ever, 1968. I make my kids listen to it at least once a year. This is our time for choosing. We will either win this or send generations into 1,000 years of darkness. This is the hill to die on for me. What is happening right now, the culture war. I disagree with Paul Ryan, like from the bottom of my soul. I am a culture war girl. I don't care about flat taxes. They are coming for my kids, okay? They're coming for the hearts and minds. These culture wars, this next 2024 presidential race, these are the most important issues, because this is the heart and soul of America. And we are the Marines. We are the 1st Marine Division, and we've got to stop this. We are just holding the wall, you know, holding that wall. And I think we need more reinforcements. But there is no planet on which I see us losing this, because it's like, you know, 300 Spartans. We have everything to lose. And I can't lose this. I have 5 children, and I want them, and you know, and I want them, and I want my grandchildren to have a taste of what I was able to have. And I'm just, you know, I'm going to die on my sword for this. Like, this is the most important thing that I have ever done in my life.
So I think you guys are wrapping up. Sorry, I had to get my kids to bed. But can I just say one thing as I wrap up, because my phone's about to die now. But I think I've said this to Shannon and Scarlett. I really believe that this is a generational war. We're not going to see the fruits of all of our efforts, and we're not doing it for us. We're doing it for our children. And you know, as Thomas Paine said, let there be, I'm sorry, I'm going to mess it up, but if there has to be, you know, discomfort, let it be my day, so that our children can live in peace. And it's going to take some time, and our children are watching us so that they can pick up where we left off and make this country better 100 years from now. So we're not
to get here.
Excuse me?
It took so long to get here. You're right, Kit.
That's right. Yep. It took 100 years to get where we are, and it's going to take 100 years to get back.
Yeah.
So, just keep doing what you're doing, inspire your kids. I know, even though it's hard on my kids sometimes, I know that they see what we're doing and love to know that that I'm fighting for them. They actually wear their Moms for Liberty shirts all around town. Like, I don't even have to ask them to do it. They just put on their Moms for Liberty, and yeah, they love to wear them because they know that, we're fighting for them. So I think, I'm so grateful for all of you. I really am. It's been so amazing getting to know all of you. And, I have really found my voice, especially since January, when I was connected with Kelly and Scarlett and Shannon, and hearing how brave these women are is just, it blows my mind every day. And I wouldn't be able to do it without you, truly.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah.
And everything you said is so true, Kit, because sometimes we may not see the fruits, like fully see the fruits of the work that we've done. And that's okay. Because we're building something greater. And it took so long to get here that even though I can feel so frustrated, like, oh my gosh, you see what the Biden administration is doing. You see what they're trying to do to Title IX. You see just that no matter just the news today about, a pregnant person should take these hormones while they're pregnant. So it can be disheartening. So, Amber, go ahead, talk. Is she still on?
I think everybody's bailing.
Kids are melting
Kids
down.
are crying, dogs are barking.
Saying goodbye. I gotta head out. I'm back in Gigi mode.
Bye, Amber. Thank you.
Thank you, Scarlett, for putting this together.
Nice to see you.
This is the thing that we do, though, right? It's like you're doing this part, and then it's like, oh wait, it's bedtime. Oh wait, the dog. Oh wait,
yeah,
time for a casserole.
The superhero moms, like,
parents with a casserole.
What are you gonna do? You just keep doing it. What did they say about?
I'm not gonna lie. These people made me crave a casserole, a good one, and I was like, "Wow, that actually sounds really good."
I have a good recipe. I'll send you.
Parents with a casserole or something like that.
I mean, I will say I grew up and I like to cook. I like to have friends over. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you gave me that peanut butter recipe before the holidays, so
that
should be in there somewhere.
Yes,
Guys,
that is yummy.
We need to cook
in our minivans, and I was like, we didn't touch the minivan Taliban. We were like, there was a whole line going down.
Don't you want to make all these things into t-shirts?
Yes. I want the one where like the back is all the different ones. That's what I want.
Right.
Oh, we should do that.
Oh,
right.
I remember one time someone came up to me and said, Scarlett Johnson, you're such a disruptor. And I was like, I want to make that into a t-shirt.
Yeah.
Well, and you know what?
Disruptor.
When they called us American Girls, I love what you said, Kit. You're like, I'm Kit. And I loved that. That was perfect.
We love the American Girls. We got it. Yeah. I love that. I love that one.
We're all American girls.
One time someone said the Scarlet Witch is legit. I was like, another t-shirt. The Scarlet Witch is legit.
That's a good like a coffee tumbler.
Get that for the wall.
I was like, thank you for that. I'm like I'm putting that everywhere. Scarlet Witch is legit. I love it.
Well, thank you, Scarlett. Thank you, ladies. I have to head offline here, but thanks to everybody that tuned in. Hopefully it's helpful and onward for kids and country. God bless you guys.
Right. Amen.
Bye. Bye, everybody. I guess it's time to head out. Bye, Natalie.
I gotta go to work.
It was fun. Yep. Now I can just catch up on the Marco Polos, I guess.
I know. I do think we should make a cookbook. I'm not kidding. It'd be fun. That's a good fundraiser.
Marco Polo is fun. It is fun. And I'm hoping, I know Kit has an event coming up. I'm going to see if I can do that. And like, I know we've got a plan. I know with Kelly, we've been saying we got to plan some kind of retreat type thing, and need it sooner rather than later. And also the presidential debate will be in Milwaukee. It's going to be August 23rd, and everyone signed up, but I'll send out a message. There are some cool things possibly happening on the 22nd and 23rd with the Leadership Institute and Moms for Liberty. And I can't wait till I can mention the names. It should be soon about some of the names that will be coming in, and we're trying to organize some trainings, some, protests, and just a lot of things centered around the debate. And Wisconsin is kind of ground zero because we are one of the 5 key states 2024 election. We're going to have the Republican convention here in July of 2024. And we're hosting the first presidential debate next month. And so I think there's going to be a lot of interesting things happening for Moms for Liberty Wisconsin. And, Moms for Liberty overall, again, is becoming a powerhouse organization that is on the forefront of the parental rights movement. And I've been apart for a year, and I knew this is going to be the organization. When you think parental rights, you are going to think Moms for Liberty. And I just feel in my bones and I'm so proud to be part of this organization because I am so passionate about parental rights. Is there last thing you guys want to say?
I mean, I think we need to come to Wisconsin in our Navy shirts. That's what I think.
Yes, you do.
Everywhere.
Come on, let's come in a month. I would love it. I would love if you guys could come. I know it's hard because school's starting. It's actually one of my kids' first day of school, August 23rd, but it should work. Everything should work out where I'll drop her off and I'll still be there to pick her up and then manage to be a part of all of this. Somehow I don't know if you guys watch The Office, Michael Scott, somehow I manage.
I don't know. Mom's managed to do it all.
Yeah, you got to try and do it all. And I don't know, Kelly, Kit is having something in September that we're trying to all get to in Maryland. So
she's not terribly far from us. There's a lot of
airplanes maybe
here. Well, no, I mean, if you
from you, it's not far. You're in Virginia. For me, it's.
And then if we could do a walk tour, because it'll be nice out.
It would be, wouldn't it be? Maryland in September, I bet that's really pretty. So yeah, I'm trying. I have to check out my kids' schedules, but we all I can't wait to get together with you all in person again. I wish it was tomorrow.
We need some of that dark money so we can just God,
I know. My God, if I really had some of that dark money, the things that I would do, it's the reverse. It's me it's not
I know.
It's not, we're giving of our time. We give of our own resources, happy to do it. But, Moms for Liberty is all grassroots. It's not dark money. It's not big donors. It's a lot of small contributions and bake sales.
That's a really good point. So there's all these things coming at Moms for Liberty in the media right now from politicians like my governor. And it's interesting when they start going after the money, because in reality, so for example, here in the state of California, in social studies, sometimes in ethnic studies, perhaps through the State Seal of Civic Engagement program, they're teaching kids how to create a narrative if you're an activist, and then how to create a counter narrative to somebody that you're opposing. And in doing so, it's very interesting analyzing the media, because my whole thing is I want to encourage people to open their eyes and go, why is that? I want people to question things, because just the reason why they're attacking the money is because it's almost like they're trying to shine a spotlight there. When in actuality, it's like that old adage, you point a finger, 3 are pointing back at you. With them, they're actually the ones that are rolling in the money.
That's right.
You know, they own the media. The teachers unions, so wealthy, these people.
Yes, I know. It's such a they have so much money. And it's not like any of us wouldn't. I know Tina and Tiffany would welcome some large donors, and imagine what we could do if we could help fund school board candidates. I mean, and Moms for Liberty, that is the only endorsements we can give are for school board candidates. And when it comes to the endorsements and trying to help candidates, it's really just school board candidates. We don't endorse any other office at this point because of our, with our C4 status. So while we will champion, and to the summit, we invited all the Democratic candidates. And whenever I have a function, when we had a tent at the state fair, we invite all the candidates, all the representatives. The Democrats never come, but they're always invited. And I have never seen a reciprocal invitation to come, although I would only come with other people.
Yeah, don't go alone.
I'm not going alone. But I think there's going to be, and you know what? If we do get more donors, who cares? Like if we do get donations, who cares? Like I wouldn't, it's not to be adverse, because our goal is to raise donations and to do more. The other side is so well funded, more wealth, it layers upon layers of funding, C3s, C4s, PACs, Act Blue, teachers unions, the slush funds. If Shannon were here, she could talk endlessly about what happens in Illinois with Governor Pritzker. I don't know if it's
Illinois is they wrote the book. We wrote the book.
Oh yeah.
The thing is that we don't need it. It'd be nice. We're doing just fine without it.
We're doing fine without it. And if we did have it, we could do more. But we're figuring out how to do with what we have. And I do think there's going to come a point where, going to the next level, where there may be more donors, more members, and that is nothing. If the left are upset, it's because they're jealous, they're worried, and you don't pay attention, and you don't to what your enemy is telling you. You don't take advice from people who hate you. People who hate your guts and are willing to fly from California into Philadelphia and hold up signs with swear words on it. I don't go up to them and say, so, what are your thoughts? What should I do next? What do we do? Of course you don't. They hate you. You don't take their advice. So when the media has some advice, I would do the opposite of everything that they say, because they're not looking out for our best interest or the best interest of kids. So anyway, all right, I guess we better sign off. I've got to actually eat dinner. I can talk this long because 2 of my kids are on mission trips, and my older ones are in college and in medical school, but it's much quieter. Only one here, and she's with her dad, so I can talk. I don't have the little ones.
I'm going to say good night, you guys.
Good night. We're all going to say good night. We're going to say good night at the same time. All right. 1, 2, 3. Good night. And that's the end. Bye, everybody.
Good night, you guys.
Yeah.